Hey there, grade 6. New video for you guys today. Moving on in our decimal stuff. And so we're going to look at two-digit division today. And so our learning target by the end of this lesson, hopefully, is that we can use rounding to estimate the quotient when dividing by two-digit numbers for cases in which doing so gets the correct quotient, which is kind of a wordy way to say, hey, I can use my estimation strategies I know about rounding and I can use those skills to help me do division, do two-digit division. And so a couple of skills to be able to do beforehand is that you need to be able to divide using a number line, and then you need to be able to divide multi-digit numbers by one-digit numbers. So say it's like 5 into 78 or whatever, you can do that division on your stuff. And so the first thing that we're going to be looking at is sort of an introduction to rounding to estimate quotients, which by using multiples of 10. So the first thing that we look at here is what is the whole number quotient before finding the remainders, which is kind of like the first step in a long division question. But it says here to have a volunteer place 23 approximately on the top number line and on 237 on the bottom. So I will just make a little mark. So 23 is roughly right here, and then 237 is also approximately right here. So that's where they are on the number line. Then the next question says, which two multiples of 5 is 23 between? Well, 5 times 4 is 20. No, that one. 5 times 4 is 20, and 5 times 5 is 25. Likewise, 50 times 4 is 200, and 50 times 5 is 250. So these questions are similar, that they're actually going to end up with the same quotient, just a different remainder. So then which two multiples of 50 is 237 between, which we just mentioned. So then we can kind of carry that on with this question, 29 divided by 8. We can start thinking about which two multiples of 8 is 29 between. And so I know that 8 times 3 is 24. And I know that 8 times 4 is 32. So the text is a little bit small. Oh, text is a bit small in there. But so 29 is between 24 and 32. So if we have this question about 296 divided by 80, I can use those same ideas. I can say then that 80 times 3 equals 240, and then 80 times 4 is 320. So then I know that the 296 is between 240 and 320. Okay, so then which two multiples are these two multiples, which we just did? We can move on to the next one. So then the next question becomes, well then what's an easier division that has the same quotient? So if I have 253 divided by 30, an easier question to consider, I'm going to make my text a little bit bigger. An easier question to consider would be 25 divided by 3 would be an easier question, because again, 3 times 8 is 24, 3 times 9 is 27. So that's the easier question. Which two multiples of 3 is 25 between? It's between 24 and 27. So then the two multiples of 30 that 253 is between would again be, I'm going to, move that down here a little bit. So that would be 30 times 8, which is 240, or it would be 30 times 9, which is 270. So what I'm trying to do is use these estimation strategies to figure out, like if I see the long division question of 30 into 253, because I can think of a simpler question like 25 divided by 3 or 3 into 25, I can start thinking about what the first number I write down on the standard algorithm or the long division question is going to look like, and I can start using that to start solving the question. Okay, all right. So this is where we actually get into the long division. So these are the questions that we just looked at on the last slide. We have 3 into 25. We said 25 was between 8 and 9. We have to go to the lower one. So we say 3 goes into 25 8 times. That 3 times 8 is 24, which leaves 1 left over. We can use that same idea to do 30 into 253. Because I know that 3 into 25 will fit 8 times, 30 into 250 for the rounding will also fit in 8 times. And so I said in the last slide that 30 times 8 is 240, and that subtracts to 13. So the question then is, what do we notice? So what we should notice is that the quotient is the same. Okay, it's 8 for both questions, but that the remainder is different. So then it says we can use the easier division to help us do the harder division, right? We can use this concept of being able to solve a simpler question to help us figure out what this quotient on the harder question is going to be. So then we got a couple of questions that we can practice. And so I'll give you the opportunity now. If you want, you can pause it, do the questions on a sheet of paper, practice them out, and then you can unpause it and follow along with us. So if I'm going to do 20 into 175, an easier question to try to solve is 2 into 17, right? And I know that 2 fits into, actually I'm just gonna, so I know that 2 fits into 17 8 times because it goes, so it's 16. And so I can use that idea that that is going to be 8 to start solving this question. And so I can say, well, 20 goes into 175 8 times. And then so 20 times 8 is 160. So then I could do my subtraction, right, and get my remainder, etc., etc. Similarly to this one, 30 into 143, a simpler question to try to solve would be 14 divided by 3. So I know that 3 fits into 14 4 times, which means that 30 is going to fit into 143 also 4 times. And then so 30 times 4 is 120. Let me just rearrange that a little bit. And then I could go through and do the solving, okay? So at this point, I'm going to see if you, or it's not see, you can pause the video and do the first 3 questions on page 41 in your workbook. And then you can click unpause. So we're going to move on. Now, moving on, you see this problem 49 into 167. The question at the top says, what makes this problem harder than the other ones we've done? Well, it's the fact that it's not a multiple of 10 is the divisor, right? So 49, that number does not end in a 0. So that makes it a little bit trickier. Now, what happens is we can actually just round the divisor to estimate the quotient, because this lesson's all about rounding and estimation and figuring out what's going to be a reasonable answer, okay? So 49 is really close to 50. And so we'll know that 49 will go into 167 about the same number of times that 50 does. It's a little bit different, but anyway. So we can round our divisor to help us find an answer. Okay, just double check. There's something else there. So let's do some rounding to figure out a sort of an easier question. I see 19 into 164. And so I can say, well, that 19 is really close to 20. So then an easier question would be 20 into 164. Now, from that point, you can say, well, I know that 2 into 16 goes 8 times, so 20 into 164 would also go 8 times. But that's in a couple steps. This question over here, I know that 38 is pretty close to 40. So I can say, I can do a rounding. anyway, so the question that I would be solving is 40 into 251. And then again, my next step could say, well, I know that 4 goes into 25 6 times, so 40 is going to fit into 251 6 times. And that's a really good strategy to use to help you figure out what that first number is. All right. So then we estimated the quotient. We said this would be 50 into 167, and then so basically 5 fits into 15 3 times. So then what's the next step? Well, then we have to start saying, well, it becomes 49 times 3. So the next step is actually figuring out what 49 times 3 is. So there's a little note here to be careful. It's not the rounded divisor you multiply, but the actual divisor. So we're going to do not 50 times 3, because that's 150. We have to do 49 times 3. And so I'll open up my calculator, and 49 times 3 is 147. So that's what's going to go down here, is 147. And then I would do my subtraction and see that my remainder there is 20. And so that would finish off that question. 49 fits into 167, 3, remainder 20. Yeah. So this one says to round the divisor to estimate the quotient, then multiply the divisor by your estimate. So if I see 18 into 143, I know that that's going to be like 20 into 143 if I round it to the nearest 10. And so using my previous step, then 2 fits into 14 7 times. So then I know that that's going to fit in about 7 times. And then my next step would be 18 times 7, which gives us 126, because I'm paying careful attention to multiply 7 by the divisor, right? And then I can do my subtraction, and I can get 143 minus 126, which gives us a remainder of 17. Likewise over here, I'm actually going to round down for this one. So I have 50, I'm going to round it down to 50 into 274, and then I know that 5 fits into 27 5 times. So that's a reasonable number to put on top here. And then I got to go back and say, well, I'm going to multiply the divisor by the number. So this gives us, so 52 times 5 gives us 260. And then I can do my subtraction and get a remainder there of 14. Okay, and so at this point, if you would like, you can pause it here, and you can work on number 4 in the workbook on page 42, and then you can unpause it when you're ready to move on. So remember here it says we're sharing 167 objects in 49 groups. How many objects are in each group? There's 3 groups here. How many objects have we divided so far? So we've done 49 into 167, fits 3 times. You'd have 3 groups of 49, and then that would give us 147, so we'd end up with 20, as we said earlier, 20 have not been divided yet, so there's 20 left over. So then we have one more bit of practice here to divide, and again, you can pause it and then do it on your own, and then unpause it to watch the solution. So I'm going to do 51 into 327. And so again, I'm going to use the strategy, so I'll round down to 50 into 327, and then I'm going to simplify the question. So I'm going to think 5 into 32 is going to fit 6 times. And so then I got to go back and make sure that I multiply 51 times 6, which is going to give us 306. And then I can do my subtraction. So I have 327 minus 306, which leaves us with 21. Okay, and so at this point, you can continue working on any other problems on 41 or 42. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. See you next time.